Welcome to this explainer. Every single day, your cells are constantly metabolizing, burning energy, and unfortunately, creating a massive amount of toxic waste in the process. It's just a byproduct of keeping you alive. But how exactly does your body get rid of all that trash without accidentally throwing away the good stuff? It's a fantastic question, and that is exactly the microscopic journey we are going to unpack today.
Okay, let's just start with a seriously mind-blowing number right off the bat, 180. Your body filters an astonishing 180 liters of blood every single day, all just to produce a measly 1.5 liters of urine. When you consider that the average adult only has about 5 liters of blood in their entire body, well, you do the math. That means your biological filtration system is processing your entire blood volume dozens and dozens of times a day. It is an incredibly efficient, non-stop process.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to tackle the toxic waste problem, meet the human kidneys, break down the 3 steps of making urine, see how we concentrate the waste, look at the ultimate elimination, and finally, discuss what happens when the system actually fails.
All right, part 1. Let's talk about the toxic waste problem.
How an animal handles biological waste is really a balancing act, and it depends heavily on the availability of water in their habitat. Take ammonia, for example. It is highly toxic and requires a huge amount of water to eliminate. That's why you see animals like bony fishes and aquatic insects excreting it directly into their watery environments. On the completely opposite end of the spectrum, reptiles and birds excrete uric acid as a paste, which requires minimum water loss. But us humans? We fall right into the middle category. Our metabolism produces ammonia, sure, but our liver actually safely converts it into urea. Urea is less toxic and only requires a moderate amount of water to eliminate. It perfectly explains why we mammals evolved this way. It's all about safely conserving our precious water.
Moving right along to part 2, meet the human kidneys.
Situated close to your dorsal inner wall, each adult kidney is only about 10 to 12 centimeters in length and weighs between 120 and 170 grams. But the internal structure, it's like a masterpiece of biological engineering. You have a tough outer boundary called the cortex and an inner medulla. That medulla is divided into these conical masses called medullary pyramids that project into the calyces. Right at the center is a notch called the hilum. Think of it as the main gateway where blood vessels, nerves, and the ureter enter and exit. This whole setup perfectly funnels the processed waste into the broad, funnel-shaped renal pelvis so it can finally be removed.
But here is the craziest part. While the kidney looks like one solid organ, the real heavy lifting happens at the microscopic level. Inside, there are individual processing factories called nephrons. And get this, there are nearly 1 million of these complex tubular structures packed into a single kidney. Each one of these million nephrons consists of a glomerulus, which is a tiny tuft of capillaries, and a renal tubule.
Which brings us nicely to part 3, the 3 steps of making urine.
Before we get into the exact steps of the assembly line, we've got to talk about your GFR, or glomerular filtration rate. Think of it as a super precise speedometer for your kidney's initial sorting process. In a healthy individual, the kidneys form about 125 milliliters of filtrate every single minute. Remember that 180 liters per day number we talked about earlier? Well, that is your GFR in action. Your body even has built-in mechanisms like the juxtaglomerular apparatus to constantly monitor and tweak this rate, so the flow is always just right.
So how does it actually happen? It's exactly like an advanced city sanitation plant. Step 1 is glomerular filtration. Blood passes through the glomerulus under pressure, filtering so finely through special epithelial cells called podocytes that almost all plasma constituents, except the proteins, pass into the Bowman's capsule. It is literally ultrafiltration. Step 2 is reabsorption. Since we filter 180 liters but only excrete 1.5, a staggering 99% of the filtrate has to be aggressively recycled. The renal tubules actively pull back essential nutrients like glucose, amino acids, and water right into your bloodstream. Finally, step 3 is secretion. The tubular cells selectively dump targeted toxins like hydrogen ions, potassium, and ammonia straight into the filtrate. This final step is absolutely vital for maintaining the acid-base and ionic balance of your body fluids.
Next up, part 4, concentrating the waste.
To truly understand how we conserve water, we need to look at a hairpin-shaped structure in the nephron called the loop of Henle. It has 2 sides working in this brilliant, contrasting harmony. As the filtrate moves down the descending limb, water is allowed to escape into the surrounding tissue, but the electrolytes are trapped inside. This makes the liquid super concentrated. But the moment it rounds the corner and moves up the ascending limb, the rules completely flip. Now, the wall is totally impermeable to water, but electrolytes are actively and passively transported out. So, as the fluid travels upward, it actually dilutes.
So why does the loop of Henle do this back-and-forth routine? It's all about setting up the surrounding environment. This flowing dynamic creates what's called a countercurrent mechanism. The opposite flow of filtrate in the two limbs, combined with the opposite flow of blood in the neighboring vasa recta capillaries, maintains a massive concentration gradient in the medullary tissue. We are talking a scale from 300 all the way up to 1200 millismoles per liter. This incredibly steep gradient acts like a sponge, making it super easy for your body to pull water back out of the final collecting duct. This is exactly how human kidneys can produce urine that is nearly 4 times more concentrated than the initial filtered fluid.
All right, part 5, the ultimate elimination.
Let's talk about micturition. That's just a fancy biological term for the voluntary release of urine. Urine is carried down to the urinary bladder where it's stored. As the bladder fills up and stretches, receptors send a signal straight to your central nervous system. Your CNS then fires back a motor message that initiates the contraction of the bladder's smooth muscles while simultaneously relaxing the urethral sphincter. And boom, that allows you to safely excrete that 1 to 1.5 liters of slightly acidic, watery fluid every day, removing about 25 to 30 grams of urea in the process.
Now, plot twist, while your kidneys are the absolute stars of the show, they do not work alone. Your lungs, your liver, and even your skin are constantly filtering out varied bodily wastes. Take your lungs. They remove roughly 200 milliliters of CO2 every single minute. The liver gets rid of degraded steroid hormones and cholesterol by dumping them into your digestive wastes. And yes, your skin pitches in too. Sweat glands eliminate small amounts of urea and lactic acid while cooling you down, and your sebaceous glands clear out waxes and hydrocarbons through protective sebum. It really is a full-body team effort.
Finally, part 6, when the system fails. When kidney failure happens and toxic urea starts building up, modern medicine steps in with hemodialysis. This is literally an artificial, external water treatment plant designed to clean your blood. They pump blood from a convenient artery through a coiled cellophane tube. Because that cellophane is porous and the surrounding dialysing fluid contains zero nitrogenous waste, the toxic urea simply diffuses right out of the blood along the concentration gradient. Then, the newly cleared blood is safely pumped back into the patient. It is an absolute lifesaver for uremic patients all over the world.
Malfunctions in this system can completely disrupt our internal balance. Uremia is that dangerous buildup of urea we just talked about. But you can also suffer from things like renal calculi, which are basically insoluble masses of crystallized salts, like oxalates, that form incredibly painful stones inside the kidney. Or you might encounter glomerulonephritis, which is an inflammation of those tiny microscopic filtration tufts we explored earlier. Maintaining your renal health is just absolutely critical to avoiding these painful issues. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. When you really stop and think about it, this astonishing microscopic sanitation plant runs flawlessly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without a single break, constantly sorting the good from the bad to keep your blood perfectly balanced. So my question for you is, how will you protect and appreciate your biological machinery from now on? Drink your water, mind your health, and definitely take a moment today to marvel at the incredible system keeping you alive. Thanks for joining me, and keep staying curious.